Hey team, welcome back to the Pretty and Powerful podcast. This is our second one now. I hope that you caught the first one. I hope you loved it so much that it made you listen to the second one. If you did miss the first one, do go back and listen. But I'll give you just a really quick recap what we went over, I should say. So really just touched on what this channel's about, on why we decided from myself as me and also as being part of the body science team, why we decided that this channel needed to happen. I sort of touched on, I've been with the body science family for just over a year now, and to me, empowering women is so important and making women confident in a gym is so important. So when Body Science contacted me and said they had this opportunity for me and what did I think, yeah, I couldn't say no. They actually called me right at the peak of probably my most stressful time at work, and I still couldn't say no. What a cool opportunity to be able to empower women and get them training really hard in the gym. So here we are. Now we're on our second podcast, which is cool. So today I'll go over a little bit more about my training history, so kind of where I started and sort of how I progressed, I guess. I guess the really cool thing about fitness is that you can go down so many different avenues and it never has to get boring. I've definitely had a few changes throughout my fitness career, I guess you would say, and it's kept it interesting and it's definitely never got boring, or if it has, it's definitely not hard to change it up. So I guess my first, if you go back to when I first even got involved in the fitness industry, I worked for a huge fitness chain probably 12 or 13 years ago, where I sold gym memberships. Didn't really trained kind of off and on. To be honest though, never really got into it, I guess. I don't know, it just didn't really resonate with me. And it wasn't until years later, probably 6 years ago now, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I was actually doing fly in, fly out work, and I was out in the middle of nowhere in Western Australia, and with not much to do. All there is to work and go back to camp. And there was a gym next door to the camp that we were staying at. So I started going. I was kind of sick of just a bad lifestyle, really, bad food choices. I think what I identified as healthy food or as maybe an okay option was definitely well off anything I would choose now. But anyway, it's not the end of the world. But I definitely recognized that I needed to make a change, and I wanted to make a change. I was kind of looking in the mirror. I actually still have my very first ever before photo that I took. And I just didn't really like what I seen in the mirror. And I remember I started doing pump classes, and I was really enjoying it. And every time I was getting stronger and I was upping the weights. And then I sort of got to a point, my body had started to change, but it just wasn't really changing anymore. And I actually had about 6 weeks until that project was going to be over, and I was going to go back to Perth, back to regular life, I guess you'd say. And I thought the girl that ran the pump classes was also a PT in this gym, and I got along with her really well. She was a really cool chick, and she was into lifting weights, so outside of pump classes, that was sort of her style of training. And so I approached her and said, here's my thing. I've got 6 weeks until I'm going to be off site. I just want to put everything into the next 6 weeks, because that's what I do. I'm an all or nothing person. And I did 5 sessions a week with her for 6 weeks, because that's what I do. And she just taught me so much cool stuff. And it was crazy how weak I was. I remember her laying me down on a bench, like on a bar, to bench press, which I would never even think of doing prior to that. And I remember I couldn't bench the bar. So a regular Olympic bar in a gym is 20 kilos. I probably myself, I don't know what I would have weighed back then, but I definitely wasn't pushing a 20 kilo bar, I know that. I remember her giving it to me and my arms were like spaghetti, and there was absolutely no way I was pushing it. So she took it off me and we ended up using something else, a smaller bar. But I mean, it was a starting point. You've got to start somewhere. So from there, I loved that, and then that was it. I then got the itch. So then I would sit at work, I would look up, I used to look at bodybuilding.com like crazy. I'd look at different websites, I'd get different workout tips, just to see, you know, and I'd put together my own workouts. I'd write it all down before I left work. Obviously wasn't doing very much work at this point. But so I would write down, you know, my workouts, and I'd get into the gym and I'd smash them out, and I'd write down what I did. I'd write down what my weights were. I just really fell in love with it. And I fell in love with, I was looking in the mirror, my body was changing. I wasn't looking like a man, like all the stigma is. Definitely wasn't looking like that, but just, you know, all the places I wanted to come in were coming in, and all the places, you know, I was starting to look fit. I wasn't trying to get skinny. I was never trying to do any of that. I just wanted to be strong, and I wanted to be fit, and I was finding it so empowering. So from there, my best friend actually had done a couple of bikini shows already. And she actually is a trainer herself and was prepping some girls. And I thought, why not? Why not have a go? So she started, she actually prepped me for my first ever show. I did an INBA show up in Darwin of all places. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I enjoyed the prep. I enjoyed everything about it. I really enjoyed the prep. For some weird reason, I enjoyed putting myself in situations to test myself on whether I would say yes or no to something. So being at a barbecue, you know, and there being greasy sausages and all this food, which is delicious and it's fine to eat, just not when you're on a comp prep. And, you know, people drinking beer and stuff around me. And I enjoyed putting myself in that position to where I had to say yes or no and choose, were my goals bigger than that instant satisfaction or that instant gratification. And I stuck to it. And I remember standing on the side of the stage, and I'm a tomboy at heart, so I'm definitely not someone that puts on a bikini with high heels on and has my hair and makeup done. I felt very, very strange, but I was so proud of myself. I held my head so high, and I knew no matter what happened on that stage, I was going to be stoked because I'd done it. All the times when someone said, just have a beer, it's only one, what's the big deal, it doesn't matter. You know, all those times I stuck to my guns, and I made sure that my bigger goal was more important to me than that, you know, that satisfaction for that short term. And I did it. So that was it then. That just kind of set me going then. I knew there was no way I was going to give it up. You know, I touched on before, I was a tomboy. I raced go-karts growing up. I definitely was not wearing bikinis or high heels or doing anything like that. I raced against the boys for probably, I don't know, 10 years, I think. I raced for state titles, Australian titles, things like that. And we raced in the dirt. It was Speedway. So I grew up around Speedway. My dad was a race car driver. So yeah, I definitely didn't come from this girly background or even a fitness background, I guess you would say. So anyway, yeah, so after that first comp, then it was, you know, straight back on the horse, straight back training again. After that first show, I learnt a lot. As I said before, my food choices and things like that were not always the best, and my perception of what was healthy was not always healthy. So I decided after that show it was time to really, I'd learnt a bunch about my training, and I was sort of getting good at putting together my workouts. I decided that was time to start learning more about nutrition and supplementation as well. So I started reading. I was reading a lot of articles. I went and I seen a nutritionist, and I started working with her of getting a meal plan done. And then working out where the gaps were in my nutrition. So if I needed to, you know, where I needed to time my meals, and if I couldn't time my meals, learning what supplements would be right for me to have in those gaps. It can get really confusing when you first start training because everybody's got something, and one person tells you one thing, another one tells you another. So it kind of took me a little while to kind of feel my way out and try different things and work out what works for me. I'm still a relatively basic eater. Even now, I really enjoy just super clean, healthy food. I don't actually enjoy junk food. And then with my supplementation side of things, I really don't go too crazy, to be honest. I keep it just to what I need. I mean, at the moment, right now, what I'm having, As I said, I train early in the morning, so I train at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. So I will have my pre-workout before I train. I always have my hydroxy burn shred. That's every single morning because I do train on an empty stomach. It's just too early for me to try and to get up an hour or two earlier than that to have a meal. So start my day with my shred. I then head to the gym. By the time I head to the gym, that's kind of half an hour after I've had it, so sort of perfect timing. I make sure that I always have my BCAAs with me, so my amino fuel. Do my session, always sipping on that. As I said, I'm fasted, so I want to make sure I'm still giving my body something. And then post-training, always my shake. I actually look forward to that. It's my favourite meal of the day. I'm lucky enough that I have a cafe in one of the gyms that I run, so the girls are a pro at making me the perfect shake now. They actually make it so good I can't make it myself. But in that, I'll just give you what my latest recipe is. I'm using at the moment the Body Science vegan protein in the vanilla. I do a banana, a zucchini. I do 2 scoops of oats, honey, and I put some creatine in there with ice and water. That's my go-to at the moment. That's my very favourite. And don't screw your nose up at the zucchini. I promise it's not terrible. You can't even taste it in there. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening to me today. I'm so glad you guys could tune in again. That's the end of our second podcast. It's been great chatting with you. Make sure you comment and let us know what the things are that you're loving and what sort of things you'd like to talk about and like to see. And I look forward to chatting to you all in the third podcast.